One of the most significant sources of suffering the modern human experiences in this day and age comes from actually a misinterpretation of what one's emotional center is trying to communicate to the conscious mind. Now, this emotional misinterpretation is a key principle to understand and to embody if you desire to unfold not only your boundless potentiality, but to transform your relationship with yourself and all of those in your life. So this is a very important principle which relates to one of the central axioms that infinite worth meditation is based on, which is that your emotions are made of truth. The truth that they are made of is, again, extremely simple and is what I've been saying repetitively for quite a bit now over the last couple of videos, and that is that you are of infinite worth. Now, your emotions only know this. They communicate completely in line with this fact of reality. So therefore, when one sees themselves with a incorrect view of lack, of seeing oneself as a limited creature whose values are very materialistically driven, and thus sees the world around them as a mere physical expression of a disconnected world from themselves, it's very easy to view others and oneself on a spectrum of worth that essentially has inferior on one end and superior down the other. And seeing the world through this spectrum of worth sets oneself up for a real solid experience of life where the emotional negativity is almost always present. Sometimes it might be a little bit dormant, but it's always there because you're basing your life on a fundamental falsity. So let's have a look at the misinterpretation that occurs when one starts paying attention to thoughts of lack. So thoughts that are related to seeing yourself as being inferior to others around you. Now, I say pay attention to because when we go further on this journey, you'll understand that when thoughts of lack appear in your conscious mind, it is a choice to pay attention to them. And when you do pay attention to them, they will stimulate certain emotional negativity, which is a signal, essentially, that you're not seeing things correctly. Okay? Now, when you think that you are of limited worth and you see yourself as inferior, you will feel solid senses of contraction. From your center, you will feel like you're getting smaller. You'll feel like you're getting more limited. And that in itself is extremely powerful because people take that sensation of emotional contraction when they generate and pay attention to beliefs in lack. They take that as emotional confirmation that this truth of one's lack is essentially true. And that can be very, very dangerous because this sets you on a downward spiral where this negativity, this inwardly generated negativity becomes a self-referential negative loop that bounces back and forth between you paying attention to thoughts of lack, which your center will then respond with emotional contraction, negativity, which you then interpret that as, yeah, see, this is true because I'm feeling limited, I'm feeling of lack, and it just goes round and round. But as it's going round, it's going down. It's a downward spiral, and this I believe is at the core of much of the mental health problems that humans experience in today's world. So let's view this situation in light of the central axiom that I mentioned earlier in this video, that your emotions are purely constructed of knowing the infinite worth that you are of. So if thoughts of lack arise in your conscious mind, you pay attention to them, which means you value them and therefore believe in the truth of what they are. You will, like I said, you'll get this contraction communicated from your center. This contraction isn't confirmation that you are a limited being. It's in fact the opposite. It's signaling that you are wrong. It is signaling that you are believing something that is fundamentally untrue. And this feeling of contraction is a feeling, it's a signal that that you're leading yourself in directions that do not resonate with the truth of what you are. If you therefore completely flip your interpretation of what this emotional signaling represents, then you will be able to start breaking this negative self-referential loop between your emotions and your conscious mind. When you pay attention to thoughts/beliefs in lack of limited worth and inferiority compared to others, that emotional contraction will always be there, bringing you down to levels of even more disbelief towards oneself. And if you simply go, wait, but I'm of infinite worth, all this belief in lack and these thoughts of lack are actually untrue. As soon as you start thinking in that way, completely in line with the truth, your emotional signaling will change quite rapidly. You'll notice an opposing message coming from your center, which is that of more expansive feelings of truth, of wholeness, of basically a thumbs up from your center saying, yes, now you are getting it right. Now you are seeing things in light of truth. So let's now have a look at another misinterpretation principle though. The next one is a little bit more complex because we are now dealing with beliefs of superiority, which comes hand in hand with beliefs of inferiority. Because if you believe you are inferior, you become very susceptible to also holding beliefs of superiority, depending on who you're comparing yourself with and what sort of materialistic measures you are using to measure the comparative worth of yourself to others. So when you believe in a sense of superiority over others based on materialistic measures, be it how you look, be it how much money you have or possessions you own, be it how much attention you receive in many situations in life. So when you do actually believe, have moments where you see yourself as being of more worth and therefore superior to others you may come across in real life, as in face to face, or in the life that we have constructed through these devices, you will receive some emotional signaling that can be very, very confusing. And it is a little bit more complex compared to the last type of misinterpretation that we discussed. And what generally happens, and what makes this view of seeing oneself in a light of superiority, what makes it so appealing and addictive, is because when you do see yourself in this way, you often receive quite an expansive, in a way positive, powerful sensation within you. And that, in that moment when you receive that, again, can very much be interpreted that these thoughts and beliefs of superiority are indeed true. Again, this creates a self-generating loop of misbelief of what one is and what others are constructed by. So when one gets this emotional signaling, it is often, however, quite temporary. It is fairly superficial in its depth, and therefore leads to individuals seeking more validation of such superiority, because although you are getting some sort of you're receiving confirmation of this misbelief, and that feels good. Like I said, it won't last for long, because fundamentally it's built on a tower of untruths, of falsities, of lies that you are holding against yourself. And therefore it leaves you having to try and continuously acquire more materialistic validation as you go along. And this will ultimately dig very, very deep holes within oneself of emotional emptiness and suffering. And of course, it can lead to individuals showing behaviors towards others that is only compounding the experiences of suffering that everyone is experiencing. Very, very toxic stuff, as we deeply all know. So what we need to be aware of is how low the emotional experience can lead to in believing in one's superiority over others, because those temporary highs of feeling of dominance, feeling of superiority in whatever way, that can make you feel big, but it's extremely egocentric in its nature, and it is inflating your own worth, which does align with the truth that you are infinitely worthy, and that's why we get the sense of expansion. But it's a false sense of expansion, because the deflation process that happens not long after is way more powerful and way more and is very scary. And such individuals that see themselves in this way they know this, and maybe not even consciously but unconsciously are very aware of the emotional pit that they are actually walking towards and about to fall into. And so it's very important for us to understand that pit, that emotional pit, is a form of punishment, essentially, that your emotions are signaling towards yourself because of the fact that you are hugely out of line with the truth of your own and everyone's infinite worth. So this is a very dangerous cycle to put yourself into, and it can very, very much lead to feelings of not just loss, but you're beyond lost. You can find yourself in the emotional underground of life experience, where if you don't break this belief in one's superiority and inferiority, then the internal suffering can lead to the worst of outcomes. I also need to add that this tendency that the modern human has to believe in one's superiority over others is layered with complexity because of the fact that this relates to the shadow that resides within all humans. And this shadow that I refer to, and it's been described in many, many different ways throughout history, in various types of circles, spiritual circles, psychological circles. But the way I describe it is quite simply, this is related to your to the fact that biologically you have memory within you that spans all the way to the inception of life that occurred 3.8 billion years ago. And therefore you have the memory of the predator within you. We all do. This is a very, like I said, very complex aspect of what we are. But again, just like all complexity, when seen in the light of truth of your infinite worth, can be broken down into a very simple substructure that it originates from. And you can see very clearly, okay, I know what this is, I know how to deal with it, because you are seeing, again, from that position of truth. I will talk more about the shadow and the memory of the predator in a future blog. But for now, it's just important to know that these beliefs and thoughts of inferiority and superiority, this spectrum of seeing yourself with fluctuating worth and everyone else as a reflection of this fluctuating worth, it's just important to see that this is a fundamental falsity that needs to be addressed first and foremost, and will naturally, when you start to understand and know yourself as an infinitely important individual. So what I'm describing here is the cause of a major disconnect that many individuals suffer from in today's world. An internal disconnect that separates you from your emotional / infinite self that is within all of us, and the expression of this personal self that you assume yourself to wholly be. This disconnect is the suffering that all of us are susceptible to, but it is a divide that can very, very straightforwardly be healed, because that is what the truth does. The truth is a medicine for healing, and that is obviously fundamental to what we're trying to achieve in our meditative practices related to infinite worth meditation. And it's a divide that can only be bridged with love, with an understanding of your true identity of being derived from self-love. And we have talked about this previously, especially in the first video, but I just wanted to make it really clear that this fundamental truth, that you are loved infinitely, unconditionally, by your nature, internally, without any requirement from the external world, knowing that is the center of your life, and it always has been. It's been shaping everything, and your misinterpretation of that has been shaping everything in your life. So start to identify with this infinite love at your center, and from which your emotions are fundamentally shaped of, and you will notice every aspect of your life will undergo changes towards betterment, towards the unfoldment of potential that has been hidden, awaiting for your attention. And once you identify with the truth of your unlimited worth, you'll be able to see everything in a much more clear light, much more clarity, and you effectively become your own teacher. You will start a path where you unfold possibilities that you couldn't imagine yourself unfolding. And each stage of unfoldment presents new possibilities of unfoldment. And that is where you start to, like I said, you become your own teacher. And the guidance in which I give is merely that. It's simply guidance. But you are the one who is taking the steps. You are the one that is experiencing the insights. You are the one who is embodying the truth of your infinite worth. And that is what we are ultimately trying to unfold on this platform of infinite worth meditation.